Hi everyone, so today I wanted to do a video on Chanel complexion products, mainly focusing on foundations. I know that Pixie Woo did a guide to Chanel foundations a few years ago, but since then there have been, what, 3 new foundations, and there have been some that have been phased out, so I wanted to kind of do like an updated version of theirs, if you will. So let's preface this with saying I do work for Chanel. I have my little uniform on. You probably can't see it because it's in black. Can you see that logo? Me working for them has nothing to do with doing this video, except for the fact that I do have product knowledge because I was trained in the Chanel brand. So because of that, like I said, I do have the knowledge of these products based on, what Chanel created them to do, who they're good for, but I'm also going to just include my opinion as a consumer because all of these products I have purchased with my own money at full price. So without further ado, I'm going to basically break down all the foundations, say what it's created to do, and what I think it's good for and what I like or dislike about it. So let's start with the newest foundation, since this is probably one a lot of people are going to want to look into and are curious about, and that is Perfection Lumière Velvet. This is the newest Chanel foundation. It was launched a few days ago, a week ago, and this is, I actually got to play with this at launch party a few months ago, and putting it on the skin, you can really see that it creates a veil of color on the skin. So this is created to be a kind of a sister to Perfection Lumière in the sense that it does have a more of a matte finish, and it is a longer wearing foundation. Now this is going to give you about light to medium coverage. It is really quite buildable, and the thing with Chanel foundations and Chanel pigments is I've had really good experiences with all of them, and the pigments being really fine and the foundations being really buildable. So Perfection Lumière Velvet is good for, I'd say, someone with normal to combination skin. If you are on the oilier side, you're going to have to powder this down the T-zone, because even though this is more of a matte finish, it's not a completely oil resistant foundation. It doesn't mean that it necessarily breaks down, but if you're oily, I do think you would have to powder this. This is really, really buildable, really quite a fine pigment, and as this dries after you've applied it, it really does feel like velvet on your skin. I mean, it's got a slightly powdery feel, a slightly, an airy powder, very soft powder feel. It's not like a dry, heavy, cakey powder feel. And this retails for $45. The fragrance in here is the same fragrance that is used in the Hydra Beauty line. So, okay, the next one we will go with Vita Lumiere Aqua. This is the first Chanel foundation I personally ever bought, and we sell so much of this stuff, and I know exactly why. So with this, it does say that you're supposed to shake it up, but something I want to tell you guys is don't shake it like that. I was used to doing that. If you just rock it back and forth, if you don't hear the shaker balls, then the formula is already mixed. I can hear it a little bit, so just lightly back and forth, because what's going to happen is if you shake it a lot, you're going to prematurely separate the foundation, and so when you get to the end of the bottle, it's going to be left with this weird gunky pigment mess. That's what they told us. I'm about halfway done with my bottle, I think. I've had it for about 2 years. It still works just fine. My favorite foundation out of any foundations from any brand that I own. I love this. This is a light to light medium coverage. You're not going to get a medium coverage out of this. It is, again, quite buildable, and the pigment is really, really fine. This gives a natural skin texture finish. It has a slight bit of dimension to it. It's not too matte, but it's also not luminous. This will just make your skin look like it's completely perfected. This is just, I mean, if you haven't experienced this, if you're going to buy a Chanel foundation, I'd say buy this one. It's $45. And so it's the least expensive Chanel foundation that they make, and this is just a godsend. I've used the most product out of any foundation that I own from any brand. I've used the most amount of this. I keep going back to it, and it always looks good no matter what. So I really like it, and it's really easy to apply. You can apply it with fingers or a brush, and this I think would be good for someone who's normal to slightly dry to combination. If you're oily, you will have to powder with this, even more so than the Perfection Lumière Velvet. Next, I'll just go ahead and mention this since it is no longer being produced. This is the Matte Lumière foundation, and I have the shade 30 Cendre, which is intensity 1.5. This was replaced by Perfection Lumière, so if you have this, and since it is discontinued, give Perfection Lumière a shot. I think you'll like it. It's quite similar. I think this gives more of a luminous matte finish than the Perfection Lumière does. It's also not touted as being long wearing, but it does wear quite a long time, and it really wears well on the skin. This is, I think, good for someone who has a combination to oily or skin tone, or skin type. And yeah, I like this. I'm not a big fan of matte finishes and foundations, but this is a matte that I can deal with because it still gives dimension to the skin, and it gives a nice sort of smooth look to the skin. Oftentimes they can look kind of dry and heavy and really kind of catch on the skin. This just glides over and looks absolutely marvelous. So check your counter if you want to give this a shot. Hopefully they have your shade left. This, I know at my counter we only have 3 or 4 of them left, and they're in the deeper shades, so it's worth a shot. Trying out if you want to just kind of grab it before they're completely sold out of it. But I do like it. It wears quite a long time on my skin, and I'm slightly combination. I get a little oily down the T-zone. Next, we will mention Vita Lumiere. Now, I have the shade 30 Cendre intensity 1.5 in this, but this is too dark. Compared to the Matte Lumiere, which is one of the complaints I have about Chanel, their shade range it's not consistent. So that is a 30 Cendre 1.5 intensity in the Matte Lumiere, and this is a 30 Cendre intensity 1.5 in the Vita Lumiere. And this is obviously, as you can see, way darker. Way darker. If anything, I wish that this foundation was in this shade and this one was in this shade, because Vita Lumiere is really nice and luminous and dewy and beautiful, not greasy looking, but it just gives this luminescence to the skin that is really hard. I have never found another foundation that does what this Vita Lumiere does. This will just kind of cloak your skin in it almost looks like just kind of silk on top of the skin. A nice, beautiful, diffused, glowy silk. Light to medium coverage, or light to light medium coverage. You can layer this, but this is much better for a dry to very dry skin. If you have very, very dry skin, like chronically dry skin, I'd say use a nice rich moisturizer underneath. This on top will give you that extra little bit of moisture and give you that radiance that your skin needs to look healthy. But, you know, with that said, I am slightly combination, and I still will use this. Just make sure I have powder on the T-zone, and it looks beautiful. Because this has just such a beautiful radiance to it that, I mean, it's stunning. So, again, I am technically the shade 20 Claire in this foundation, but with that said, I am a 30 in other foundations as well that are not this one, which is kind of annoying, I have to say, because I bought this thinking, oh, it's a 30, that's what I'll be, about years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's just, I can't do it. I can't, it's too dark for me, and which is kind of silly because this is more the shade I'd be in the summer, but this is not something I'd use during the summer because it just gets too hot and my skin would not react well with this in the summer. Vita Lumiere is $55. Okay, next we have some stuff that I don't actually own the full size of, but I do have samples and I have used them on myself and other people. The Lift Lumiere, which is in this little bottle, is actually what I have on right now. Lift Lumiere is for someone who it's supposed to be for someone who has more mature skin, but I think if you have a drier skin, this could be really good. And this has a more of a luminous finish. I have no powder on, and I have no extra highlighter on. And this is like Vita Lumiere, but with more coverage. You can get about medium to buildable medium coverage. You're not going to get full coverage out of this, but this is completely smoothing on the skin, just like Vita Lumiere is, but it does give a lot more coverage. So I think it was smart of Chanel to do a foundation that's supposed to be lifting and firming for more mature skin that has a luminosity to it, because light will really diffuse the textural problems of wrinkles and fine lines and things like that. Something luminous is going to bounce the light off of those areas, and matte foundation typically will just kind of sink right in. So yeah, I think Vitalumiere would be great for someone who has a drier skin but wants more coverage. I don't know so much about the lifting and firming properties. That's, to me personally, like, I don't think a foundation, you should put skincare products in something that's not created to sink into the skin. So, yeah, I don't know about the lifting and firming action, but I do think that it looks nice. I put it on someone the other day and it looked beautiful on her skin, and she had pretty good texture. I mean, she had some fine lines and wrinkles, but it looked beautiful on her. And so definitely worth a shot if you have a drier or mature skin and you want something that is going to give you a bit more coverage, but give you that luminosity that your skin needs in order to look more refreshed. Okay, let's talk about Perfection Lumière, which is in here. I use this shade 30 Beige, or, yeah, 30 Beige. I can also use the 20. The reason that 30 sometimes doesn't work for me is I find that this foundation gets darker throughout the day. So I looked in the mirror at the end of the day and I was just much darker than I was when I first put this on. So I tried the 20 and I think that one worked a bit more, but it also didn't darken as much as the 30 did. So I don't know. This is a medium to almost medium full. I wouldn't say it's full by any means. And that's the thing with Chanel, is they really don't make anything that's going to be completely opaque coverage, like your MAC Studio Fix Fluid or your Revlon Color Stay, Estee Lauder Double Wear. Chanel doesn't make a foundation like that because Chanel doesn't believe in covering up the skin. It believes in perfecting the skin, which is why all of these foundations that I'm naming have the word Lumiere in it, which means light, or radiance. Kind of luminosity, and that's what Chanel believes in. Even their Perfection Lumière, which is a matte, long-wearing, medium to fuller coverage foundation, it still doesn't look flat. It still has some dimension to it. So this is something I would recommend for someone who has a combination to oily skin, or someone who works long hours that needs their makeup to last a long time. And it is definitely hard to work with if you have dry skin. We usually have to do like a Hydra Beauty Creme Riche or Le Lift Creme Riche or a Hydra Beauty Essence Mist and a hydration cream, because you really need a lot of slip for this foundation to work if you have dry skin. If you're more oily and you just use a regular lotion, that could be enough to get this foundation to slip and slide around for it to be blended beautifully. But on a dry skin, it's really hard to work with, so not something I'd recommend if you have a drier skin, but it is also worth a shot. I mean, it's still a great foundation and it does wear a long time. It's just not my personal favorite. And Perfection Lumière retails for $57. Also, we make a Vita Lumiere Aqua Compact, and I actually have some here in this little jar. I didn't buy the full size yet. Vita Lumiere Aqua is for someone who has a drier skin but wants more coverage and really likes the portability of a compact cream. This is a great foundation if you have any kind of textural issues, because it just completely glides over them and will not sink into the lines. Chanel recommends applying this with a sponge, which I think is nice, but I also like using a brush and then maybe blending with a sponge or fingers, because I like the control of a brush. But with that said, with a sponge it really helps it to smooth on. This is a $58 foundation, and I have the shade 20 Beige because this is something I would usually probably wear in the winter, simply because it is a little bit more hydrating. Not so much hydrating, but it's not going to be great for a really oily skin. So, and I tend to be a little bit lighter in skin tone as far as the winter goes. It's a really great foundation, I think, for a more mature skin as well, because it doesn't settle at all. And the coverage that you can get is, I'd say, medium to buildable. You can layer this on. You can't layer it as well as you can layer like the Perfection Lumière Velvet or Vita Lumiere. You have to be a little bit more careful because it is a cream, but it does give just a beautiful look to the skin. I think it gives about, I don't know, it gives a natural luminosity. It's not too glowy. It's not as glowy as maybe this or the Vita Lumiere foundation, but it does have a nice luminosity to it, and I really, really like that. Also, you don't need very much product. A little bit tends to go quite a long way. Chanel also makes the Double Perfection powder foundation. It's a dual use foundation, so you can use it dry to get a light medium coverage, or you can use it with a damp sponge to get more medium coverage. It's not my favorite. Out of any of the foundations that Chanel makes, it's my least favorite. And out of powder foundations from other brands, it's definitely not as good as other ones that I've tried. I'm not a big fan of it, but people seem to really, really like it. It does have a very buttery texture to it. It's not a dry powder, but I also think that unless your skin texture is immaculate or you've completely smoothed your skin over with a nice moisturizer after you've exfoliated it, it can tend to look a little bit to cling, so you have to be really careful with that. Really hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below and I would love to answer them. Yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope it was helpful. Like I said, please leave any questions you have below and I'd be glad to answer them. And I will talk to everyone soon. Bye guys.